Today, we're going to dive into one of the most subtle yet powerful laws of strategy there is, Law 31, control the options. It's a technique that shapes our lives every single day, usually without us having a clue that it's even happening.
So, let me ask you a question. Think about the last big decision you had to make. Did you feel like you were totally in the driver's seat? Carefully weighing every possible path to find the absolute best one? Well, this law is here to challenge that whole idea. It suggests that maybe, just maybe, the choices you thought you had weren't the only choices that were out there.
So what's the core idea here? It's this: the best deceptions are the ones that seem to give the other person a choice. Now think about that for a second. This isn't about using brute force or twisting someone's arm. It's about making people feel like they are in command, when really, you're the one pulling the strings. You present them with a menu of options, but here's the brilliant trick. Every single item on that menu leads to a place that benefits you. They feel trapped, sure, but because they chose their own path to get there, they feel responsible for it.
To really see how this works in the real world, let's jump into the high-stakes drama of 16th century Russia and talk about a leader who would earn the nickname Ivan the Terrible.
Now, what's so fascinating here is that Ivan wasn't operating from a position of strength at all. In fact, he was incredibly weak. The powerful nobles, the boyars, were pretty much laughing in his face. His closest advisor had just betrayed him. Enemies were literally at the gates of Russia, and inside his own kingdom, Ivan was a king in name only. He had the crown, but he had zero real power.
So what did he do? In an absolute stroke of genius, he didn't fight back. He did the opposite. He left. He packed up, abandoned Moscow, and then sent a letter. And in that letter, he laid out two choices for them. Option A, let him come back as the undisputed absolute ruler, with the power to punish anyone he saw as a traitor, no questions asked. Or, Option B, he'd abdicate for good. He'd leave them to it, which meant a brutal civil war and being completely vulnerable to invasion.
And this is where it gets so incredibly clever. When they were faced with these two options, complete chaos and destruction, or a tyrant they at least knew, what do you think they chose? They chose the tyrant. They actually sent a delegation to beg Ivan to come back and rule them with an iron fist. See, he didn't seize power. He made them give it to him. They felt like they made a rational decision, and in doing so, they became willing participants in their own oppression.
Okay, now let's see this exact same law play out in a totally different world. We're going to leave the cold politics of Tsarist Russia and head over to the elegant, refined salons of 17th century Paris to look at the incredible strategy of a courtesan named Ninon Delenclos.
Ninon was brilliant. She looked at the world around her and saw that women, no matter how powerful, were almost always dependent on men. If you were married, you depended on your husband. If you were a typical courtesan, you depended on a wealthy patron. She wanted none of that. She wanted real freedom, financially and personally. So she decided to build her own world with her own set of rules.
She came up with this system that gave her suitors two very clear options. First, you could be a payeur, which just means payer. These men paid a lot of money to be in her world. They got her amazing conversation, access to her intellectual friends, and her friendship. But that's it, no romance. Or you could try to become a favori, her chosen favorite. This was a man she picked based purely on her own attraction for a short-term affair. And here's the absolute key. The favori was forbidden from giving her any money.
And this is the genius of it all. The men felt like they were in control, right? They were choosing which path to take. But look at the outcome from her point of view. The payeurs funded her entire lavish lifestyle, giving her total financial independence. And the favori? Well, they gave her pleasure, but just as importantly, they built a reputation as a woman who could not be bought. Every single choice a man made, she won. She designed the perfect game.
So, we have a czar in a palace and a courtesan in a salon, using the exact same playbook to get what they want. But why is this so unbelievably effective? To understand that, we have to look at the psychology, at how our brains are actually wired.
So why does this work so well? Well, it taps into a fundamental quirk of human psychology. We think we want unlimited freedom, but honestly, we don't. Too many options create anxiety. It's a real thing called choice paralysis. But if you give someone two clear doors, door A and door B, they feel empowered.
They feel like they're in control. What we don't notice are doors C, D, and E that have been cleverly hidden from us. Ivan's boyards were so focused on tyrant versus chaos that they never stopped to think about a third option, like, say, forming their own government. Neuron suitors were so busy trying to decide between payer versus lover that they never questioned the system itself. And once we make a choice, we're psychologically locked in. It becomes our decision, and we'll defend it to the end.
All right, so now that we understand the psychology, let's break down some specific tactics for how you can actually apply this law. Think of this as the strategist's playbook.
First up, a technique called coloring the choices. This was Henry Kissinger's go-to move with President Nixon. He'd present Nixon with several policy options, but he would frame his favorite one with all the positive data and optimistic projections, while loading up the others with risks and potential downsides. Nixon felt like he was the one making the tough call, but Kissinger was essentially holding up a giant flashing sign that said, "Pick this one." You see this in business meetings all the time, right? 3 proposals are presented, but one is clearly designed to be the winner.
Then you've got this masterful little bit of reverse psychology called forcing the resistor. This is perfect for stubborn, defiant people. The famous therapist Milton Erickson used this. If he had a patient who fought him on every single suggestion, he would just start encouraging their negative behavior. He'd say something like, "You're right, you should probably just keep smoking." And the patient's own need to rebel would kick in. In their desire to defy him, they'd choose to quit, which of course was his goal the whole time.
And finally, there's the most aggressive version of this law, putting your opponent on the horns of a dilemma. This is the classic no-win scenario. Ivan the Terrible did this perfectly. Both chaos and tyranny were terrible options for the Boyars. It's like the classic lawyer question. Have you stopped cheating on your taxes? If you say yes, you admit you were cheating before. If you say no, you admit you're still doing it. Either way, you're sunk. Your opponent is trapped, and any move they make just digs their hole deeper.
Now, with any law of power, it's not a one-size-fits-all deal. Sometimes, trying to control your opponent's options is the absolute worst thing you can do. And that brings us to the crucial reversal of this law, the power of giving them apparent freedom. So, when do you give freedom instead of controlling the choices? You do it when your own position is a little shaky or when you just need more information. The banker James Rothschild was a master of this. When new rivals popped up, he wouldn't attack them. Instead, he'd give them the freedom to make their moves, to show their cards. He'd just watch and learn their strategies and their weaknesses. And then, when the time was right, he'd use that information to crush them. Sometimes the best way to control people is to let them think they're completely free.
And this gets at a really deep truth about human nature, which Machiavelli nailed perfectly centuries ago. He basically said that the wounds we inflict on ourselves, the mistakes we make by our own free will, hurt a lot less than the ones others inflict on us. When people fail because of a choice that they made, they blame themselves, not you. They engineer their own downfall.
And that really brings us to the heart of Law 31. The next time you're facing a big decision, whether it's at work, in a negotiation, or in your personal life, just take a second. Look at the options sitting in front of you, and then ask yourself that one crucial question. Who dealt these cards? Are you really choosing from the full deck, or are you just picking from the hands someone else wants you to see?